I think the fact that post-war England is starting to become multicultural is absolutely central to this story. Because for me, the first people to inhabit a multicultural Britain are the white kids and the West Indian kids living together in rundown, rat-infested estates in London and Liverpool and Glasgow and all the places where this story starts.
It's utterly impossible to underestimate the impact of the Windrush. Without that boat loaded down with Caribbean people looking for a new life in this country, and then being sent records, and then those records spreading out, I can't even imagine what British subcultures would be like without that.
Multiculturalism, it was always going to take root firmly in Britain because of our imperial past. You know, that is, every action has a kind of reaction, and you can't spread roots of your own society out into the world without something then coming back, and also coming back onto what was ostensibly a tiny island.
Well, the rude boy culture was everything that British youth culture wanted to be, in that it was edgy, it was dangerous, it was completely anti the mainstream. And basically that's what youth culture should always be. It should always come from being anti the mainstream.
We were so slick with our dress, you know, our trousers, the seam had to be right, you know, it's stand up there, you know, our brogues have to be clean and, you know, polished, well polished, you know.
The idea of showing white socks with black trousers, you know, that I can't think of when narrow trousers and white socks was ever worn before in Britain, and that was definitely a rude boy thing.
Your silk hanky has got to be in the pocket, you know. You know, you think, well, I mean, it's just an hanky, but it's not just an hanky, it's a statement, you know.
The little pork pie hats, the slightly hitched up trousers, the low rise on the trouser, anyway. It's all about an emphasis of masculinity, really.
We introduce a swagger, you know, a style, a walk, the way your trousers hang, you know, it's got to be at the right length, you know, and that's all come from Jamaicans.
So you get people from the West Indies bringing over mento and scar, wearing their trousers a little bit higher, wearing their pork pie hats with slightly shorter brims, walking in a very different fashion. And you mix that up with kind of traditional English elements of braces and a Crombie coat and a pair of loafers and brogues. What have you got? Skinheads.
Okay, skinheads, get up, get set. Grab your bag, your kit, and get fit.
The first lot of skinheads that I was aware of, but of course they didn't have that label put on them, were the working class kids who were the early set of mods who wanted to wear something neat if they had menial jobs.
Skinheads definitely came out of the mod thing. There's no doubt about that at all. They were the younger brothers. They weren't even called skinheads. That was a media term.
Move around, don't sit down now.
Skinheads are hard, no-surrender, militant working-class mods. Really stripped down. They've taken that mod look and they've taken it right back to its kind of essentials.
It was a really cool, underground, subversive thing, just like the mods. You couldn't read about it in magazines. There was just only a couple of shops, hardly anybody knew about them, you know, and then all of a sudden, yeah, it did explode.
I couldn't say these kids were racist in the way that, you know, that I knew that the larger society around me was, in terms of, you know, the Caribbean population that was coming into the country at that time. They were, I don't know, I don't really think they even thought about it.
If you ain't a skinhead, then get off somewhere and have a cough.
The skinheads I knew, circa 68, 69, 70, they weren't racist. I never experienced any racism. I can honestly, hand on heart, say.
They were quite happy in the little subculture that they had and the way that they dressed. They knew they were cool. That was always my thing. Skinheads were 10 times cooler than the little hippie contingent.
It's a style and a musical thing that and to me that's what brought black and white together.
The original skinhead look came out of American Ivy League. No doubt about that whatsoever. You know, the haircut with the slightly pointed high parting, the button-down shirts, the waisted jackets.
Those guys had their hair cut short because they dug the way astronauts had those buzz cuts. They wore braces. They wore flat-fronted chinos.
To them, it was all about style, being crisp, being quite conservative, being very, very careful, stay-pressed trousers. Everything looked very neat, very tidy. Tonic suits, you know, three-quarter length, lovely, you know, two-tone mohair jackets.
I mean, it was serious dressing. No creases allowed. You know, you'd be pressing and you'd be polishing your shoes. Immaculate. This was against the background of so-called swinging London, where everybody was wearing great big orange collars or gold or ridiculous bouffants and things, and the height of fashion for street kids was like boots, and that was just in the face of everything.
It's an extraordinary statement, which says we are proud to be working class. We're actually, if you like, an example of that multiculturalism that we come to talk about, because most of it comes from the West Indies. They dance to ska music and to reggae. They kind of ape the looks of the black kids who share the same council estates as them. It's no surprise that skinheads grow up in those tough inner city areas that are shared with black and white.
The girls looked fantastic, I thought. The girls were wearing suits. The girls were getting their suits made. They were wearing tonic suits.
They would wear white, opaque tights. They'd wear patent leather brogues, black shiny brogues, lace-ups, two-tone mohair skirts. And then at the top would be more like the boys. They'd often wear braces and a white shirt, Ben Sherman shirt, and then their hair cut into a feather cut, but very thin, wispy bits like that.
The first generation girls weren't as exaggerated, I think, as the second generation girls, you know. But they did look pretty cool with those bits just hanging down. I thought it looked great, really.
If you walked around in the late 60s looking too hippie-ish, you ran the risk of being attacked by skinhead girls. They'd walk around in gangs and they literally would attack you with their shoes, often.
I want all you skinheads to get up on your feet. Put your braces together and your boots on your feet. And give me some of that old moon stomping.
The skinhead is an obvious folk devil who can inspire moral panic, and I think that it's very, like everything, it's very difficult to tar people with the same brush.
The press defined the whole thing, really. I mean, I remember I got back from holiday and, like, the assistant manager said, oh, there was a thing in the Mirror yesterday about young people who dress a bit like you, called skinheads. I said, what? And it had a diagram, a drawn diagram. This is a skinhead. And he had, like, shaved hair, white T-shirt, braces, jeans and big boots, and he was sort of standing like that.
Now remember, I'm your boss, skinhead speaking. My name.
As soon as the media coverage started, the coolest ones grew their hair long. Other people, as I said, followed, and then, you know, as a result, the media started calling them suedeheads. But the whole thing was over by 1970.
Now, when I said sing...
It's funny that the whole skinhead thing died out at the end of the 60s. I guess, you know, it was just this little subculture blip that came up and went away again, but it crept back again.
Later on, you get a skinhead revival in the 70s, which is overtly racist, which is associated with oi music and all of that kind of nasty, ugly stuff.
And I'll tell you what, there was nothing cool about these guys. They did not look cool. They looked horrible. They didn't have any style. It was a uniform for them. Do you know what I mean? It was you, we're this. There was nothing to do with style.
Those kids, you know, adopted the skinhead look because it looked very intimidating. I guess it was that kind of close-cropped Hitler Youth thing. Braces, Nazi salutes, but they were always a minority, and I guess they were eliciting a disproportionate media coverage.
It was when somebody who thought they were being very smart and clever, how can we hijack the youth and get them into a movement? That's when the National Front tried to hijack the skinhead movement and brought it in them. So it's only a very, very, very small little group of people. The media tends to blow it up. big headline. It was nothing like that, you know?
When you're talking about social subcultures, you're talking about groups of people, and groups are, by their very nature, will always subdivide. It's funny because there were the left-wing skinheads, really vibrant left-wing skinheads. There were the right-wing skinheads, and then in the middle there were still the skinheads. You didn't want anything to do with either group, really.
The style and look of skinhead recurs every so often. It's now a staple of the palette of the fashion designer.
That look made an indelible impression on me, and I guess 40-odd years later on, I still sport elements of that look because it's classic. It was never about fashion, it was always about style, and style never dates.